Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call the regular meeting of council to order. Our clerk will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have some late items, Ms. Gurry.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. For agenda item 2, approval of the agenda, we're adding Community Charter Section 90, subsection 1, subsection K.
Very good, thank you. A procedural motion to proceed in camera. Moved Councillor Martman, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We will now proceed in camera. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the October 18th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to, with respect, acknowledge firstly that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. Tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter and Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272. As the province is now in Phase 3 of the reopening plan, question period has been reinstated for those in attendance for agenda items only. The question period sign-up sheet is on the table by the double doors to my left. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet. And at the start of a question period, I will call up those who have signed up to the podium to address Council. And the first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Gurry, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. For agenda item 14B, we are adding a notice of motion from Councillor Hemmens regarding Memorandum of Understanding with BC Housing.
Thank you very much. A motion for the adoption of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Hemmens, seconded Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. I have 4 items on the Mayor's report tonight. The firstly is to remind everyone that the City is seeking applications for the 2022 social planning grants. $85,000 in funding is available for local nonprofits and neighborhood groups. Beginning and having started already, beginning October 8th, the City will be accepting applications for the 2022 social planning grant program. The program aims to assist organizations in responding to issues of a social nature with initiatives that enhance social cohesion, address the root causes and effects of poverty, contribute to the vitality of our community, and foster social inclusion and social equity. Following on that, the City of Nanaimo recognizes Homelessness Action Week. The first Homelessness Action Week began in 2006 in British Columbia as a way to raise awareness about the causes of homelessness and engage the public, governments, and institutions around finding solutions. The 2020 Nanaimo point-in-time homeless count found that a minimum of 433 people are living unhoused in Nanaimo, and it is estimated that the number is far greater, and most of us are relying on the figure of over 600 of our fellow citizens. The City has worked, obviously, with the provincial government, BC Housing, delivering 190 units of permanent supportive housing through the partnership with BC Housing. And the first building at 702 Nickel Street is scheduled to open next month officially. Samaritan Place at 702 Nickel Street will have space for 66 people, 52 studio suites, and 14 bridge to housing beds for women. We've also, as I just announced, of course, provided the $85,000 in social planning grants as usual. We're sponsoring a temporary weekday breakfast meal program at the Salvation Army New Hope Centre, partnering to provide for both an extreme heat cooling centre in the summer and emergency warming in the winter, providing $90,000 in financial support to the Nanaimo Regional Rent Bank, and $35,000 housing first subsidies operated by the Nanaimo Regional John Howard Society. I well appreciate in this community there is a great deal of concern, some of the reaction extremely negative to those of our fellow citizens who are unhoused, and many of whom suffer from addiction and mental health and brain injury issues. And I would hope that in the consciousness of this week, instead of seeing this necessarily as the enormous social problem that it is, and a sad reflection on a society that has not solved these issues and indeed over several decades has exacerbated them, that people will show the kind of compassion and, where appropriate, take the advocacy necessary to see if we can actually improve the lives of those of our citizens, and which benefits all of us in this community. It is also the great annual BC Shakeout at 10:21 on October 21st. At that date and at that time, residents and businesses are asked to drop, cover, and hold on to practice their safety protocols and prepare for a potential earthquake. It's not a very cheering prospect, but that literally as each day passes in this community, based on statistical historical evidence, we are all going to potentially face a serious earthquake and it is important that this timely action annually reminds us to be prepared, not just in terms of the immediacy of drop, cover, and hold on, but also by ensuring that we have emergency preparedness kits in our homes and action plans to deal with the emergency. In addition, testing, the City of Nanaimo is sending out a test alert. The second annual test alert takes place on October 28th. To cap off its second annual emergency preparedness, you will be sending out that test alert through our emergency notification system, Voyant Alert. On October 28th at 10:15 a.m., registered users will receive a test via SMS text, phone call, email, or as a notification through the app, depending on what type of messaging each individual has registered for. Registration for the Voyant Alert system has surpassed 12,000 subscribers. The city wants to see that number grow. In the event of an emergency, such as an earthquake that I've just talked about, this alert system will be a vital way of alerting and updating the public. I would remind residents that they can register for the service by downloading the Voyant Alert app, visiting www.nanaimo.ca/go-to/alerts, or calling Public Works, for us, those of us who are terribly old-fashioned, at 250-758-5222. And finally, we're calling on good citizens who have the appropriate experience to consider application to be members of the Board of Variance. The applications are open until November 17th, 2021. Residents interested in becoming more involved with the local governance have the opportunity to apply to the Board of Variance. The City of Nanaimo is currently recruiting 3 members for a 3-year term. It is an independent body that can grant variances to relax zoning regulations, servicing requirements, and tree protection requirements, extend non-conforming uses, and reconstruct non-conforming buildings. You can submit your application through mail to Legislative Services, 455 Wallace Street, Nanaimo, BC, V9R 5J6, or email to legislative.servicesoffice@nanaimo.ca. And that is the Mayor's report. We have no presentations, Ms. Gurry, and we have no committee minutes to worry about, no consent items. So let's get to item 11 on the agenda, which is delegations. And we have the Yellow Point Ecological Society tonight. Mr. Dauncey, good evening. If you could introduce yourself and your address, and you'll have 5 minutes, as I think you're aware, and I'll start the clock. And at about 4 minutes in, I'll wave or say something to indicate you've got a minute left. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a normal plus for forward, is it? Yes, it is. So I'm president of the Yellow Point Ecological Society, and we have major concerns around, the well-being of nature in general. And we really congratulate the City of Nanaimo on being the first Canadian city to embrace the donut economy principles. And in particular, as part of the Reimagine Nanaimo process, when we look at the outer circle, to live within our means, minimizing the harm we do to the natural environment, and maximizing the amount of ecological benefit we give back. When it comes to industrially zoned lands, we have a particular interest. That's what got us triggered by the Cable Bay developments on either east and west of the Cable Bay lands, up in the northeast corner of Nanaimo. So this is land owned in the jurisdiction of the City of Nanaimo. And the land up to Duke Point is already zoned industrial. The land around the Cable Bay is currently zoned agricultural, rural, residential. But the owner, and it's also designated as such in the OCP. And the industrial lands are designated and zoned as industrial. There's been 17,000 people have signed a petition asking for greater protection of the lands around Cable Bay Trail and to try and link up to Joan Point Park and maybe have a trail going down to Cedar by the Sea and stuff like that. But there's one particular piece. There's the owner of the land, which is a development company out of Alberta. He thinks it east side lands and west side lands. And for the west side lands, he's anticipating the entire thing being developed as industrial, right up to the trail. So in the awareness that some of this may happen, we started thinking, like, how do industrial lands fit within the donut economy principles? And so in the current Reimagine Nanaimo overview, in scenario 1, the land up it is all designated for a resort center, and the industrial thing is not off the map, is off the map. In scenario 2, it's increased industrial lands in that area, and the same in scenario 3. So there's no option at the moment for thinking differently. So this is the current industrial lands up towards Duke Point, where there's really nothing happening environmentally and in terms of ecological protection. It's a lot of asphalt, it's a lot of buildings. There's a lot of space that's not been occupied, actually. There's come in one end, waste goes out the other. And waste goes somewhere that a landfill or toxics or whatever, and it's just not thought about. In an eco-industrial park, the resources you use get completely recycled back as waste into the system, and you're reusing as many resources as possible. So you don't have a stream called waste that needs to go to the landfill. The city of Richmond has already been developing such a concept, around the circular economy. They've got quite some sophisticated ideas developed around that. And around the world, we'll see the concept of a green industrial park happening in Singapore, in Malaysia, in the Philippines, in Vietnam, in Zhenjiang in China, in Tianjin in China, and in Barcelona, where they've got it's quite within the city fabric, a whole eco-industrial park concept with quite sophisticated concepts going on here, including some residential included in it. So, in a nutshell, our proposal from the Yellow Point Ecological Society is that the city develop a donut economy framework for all lands currently to be rezoned industrial, and a phasing in of such a framework for all existing industrial lands, such that every owner, tenant, or leaseholder would work to reduce the climate pollution of all operations to zero by 2040, work with other tenants and leaseholders to create a green circular economy which shares waste and resources, resulting in zero waste going to the landfill, develop a plan to embrace green chemistry, minimizing the release of toxic substances, to maximize on-site rainwater harvesting, to maximize the flow of rainwater through pervious surfaces, except when materials require secure capture because they've got some toxicity, to minimize the felling of trees, to maximize tree cover and ensure that new trees are protected and watered, to establish a 100 meters buffer next to adjacent residential or natural areas, to create safe hiking trails along perimeters, enabling trail connections, to use native planting in all ground cover and landscaping, to create ponds and wetlands, which are so important for wildlife, and to allow some residential occupancy, similar to what Courtney has done in its industrial zone up in Tin Town, which has been going for like 20 years now. And we request that such a framework be written into the new OCP and applied to all industrially zoned lands. And that's my under 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dauncey. Questions? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to our delegation, and thank you for the presentation. I'm a big fan of the donut economy. Some of the things you're referring to are, to me, is industrial zone that is manufacturing.
Yep.
But it's my understanding the vast amount of land that will be used there will be for a warehouse. And that's because the new docks that they're building at Duke Point will allow the larger container ships that can't get into Vancouver to come here. So they're looking for less manufacturing industrial. It'd be more light industrial and warehousing for storing of products and going out. How does that fit in with
Well, of that long list of things, you're not generating so much waste, obviously, but you've got a big roof area. Mm-hmm. So that roof can either be green roof planted or solar, because right now we don't need solar energy, but we will do once we start to electrify everything. And all the landscaping around the warehouses, could be more than just the bare concrete. Roads are often designed far too wide to allow a fire engine to do wheelies and wheelies. I know you've got big trucks in industrial areas, but just to not allow the engineers to run away with it and do, contract plus 10% because they get more and you end up with more concrete unnecessarily. And pervious surfaces, where does that, all that concrete in that roof is draining water off somewhere, which will normally go back into the land. And that part is part of the Yellow Point Aquifer, which is a very fragile, water system underground. So we're all on, minimal maximum water controls the year round. So all those things would still kick in, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Seeing no further questions, Mr. Councillor Gasselbrock.
Great, thank you. Through you, Your Worship, thanks for the presentation. I really appreciate the vision and the picture that you painted, and it's interesting to see other jurisdictions that have gone and done that. And I know, you know, in presentations to council from staff, the concept of eco-industrial zone in some fashion was mentioned. And I guess this is a question to staff, is just in terms of the process of Reimagine Nanaimo and looking at zoning options. What's been discussed so far in these concepts, and is there opportunity to further pursue these ideas in the rezoning of these lands and how we develop them?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Gasselbrock. So yeah, certainly the eco-industrial idea is something we've been discussing for quite a while. And this is certainly an area that this could apply quite well, especially with Harmac, where you have extra energy and you've got water. So certainly something we looked at. So certainly much very aligned with the speaker. The economic development strategy talks about exploring this area for logistics hub and the circular economy. So there's a lot of tie-in here to what you were just presented with. And in terms of Reimagine, the scenario that we've been looking at in 2 and 3, which the speaker showed you, the idea is for the industrial to be on the north or west side of the trail, and then from the trail to Joan Point would be large lot rural residential development. And the form of the industrial is still to be determined, really. I would, when we say all industrial lands, you do have quite a lot of industrial land in the city. So certainly this area is a heavy industrial that we're looking at, but you also have light industrial in the Boxwood area, in Northfield, Bowman Drive areas. So I think you just want to be cognizant of the style of industrial development you have. I think a lot of the work you've done in the Boxwood area is actually very innovative. You've got the rain gardens and different forms of character happening there, large protection areas. So you do actually, quite often we have planners from other parts of the province come look at Boxwood as a great example for others to follow.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. Just, you know, in the presentation of the Environment Committee, just seeing that a lot of these buildings and developments, you know, their impacts will last for 50 to 75 years for redevelopment. I think that there is a good opportunity here, and I'm just curious, like in the Reimagine process, to provide more feedback on the development of those specifics within that rezoning. Is that something that's going to be brought forward and discussed when we start looking at the policy options coming in phase 3?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Gasselbrock. Yeah, so through the policy development, we'll be bringing new ideas for you, and you'll have a chance to review those policies and provide us feedback. So certainly hope to bring some new ideas to you. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Mr. Dauncey, I'm just wondering if you'd be able to email your presentation to us so I could look at it again.
Well, your staff has it already.
Oh, because I didn't get it on mine.
Yes, so any presentation from a delegation will be added as a supplemental item and to the website, as well as sent to all of you after the meeting.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Curry. Thank you very much for your presentation. Very enlightening.
The one piece that I would have added is that because of the climate emergency and the biodiversity emergency together make this the most critical decade in the history of civilization, we've got to think in really different terms, because we're losing nature and we're piling up these greenhouse gas emissions, and it's only getting worse and worse and worse from now on unless and Nanaimo can show such leadership in this. I mean, you're the first city in North America to sort of get involved with the donuts. I think there's real potential for Nanaimo, and and it can be true in industrial as well. Normally we don't think about the industrial lands, but why not? That's where the things get made. That's where stuff happens. So we can really be proud of a change, I think. We really need it. And thank you for giving me the time for this presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dauncey. Much appreciated. The next item, item 12, reports, and the first is commitment to maintenance of Integrated Survey Area 20. Mr. Sims, this will be an illuminating thing for many of our citizens who are watching tonight.
Your Worship, I'm absolutely thrilled to be here to talk about survey monuments and integrated survey areas. Especially Councillor Thorpe just informed me that his father was the Surveyor General, so would have been the boss of this program had it existed at his day. So that's an interesting bit of history for you. Your Worship, it's really just seeking council support to continue our ongoing operations and our commitment to the integrated survey program that's province-wide. In fact, North America-wide in some respects. So currently, being part of the Integrated Survey Monument Program, we are on a common North American datum for coordinates, survey coordinates. So we know where we are in the world relative to everybody else. So the coordinates are universal. Without this program, we would have sort of a hodgepodge of anybody could make up their own coordinate system. So this is the whole point of the effort, the integrated survey program. So we have little brass monuments in the road that we know exactly where they are in space and elevation, and everyone that does any work uses those. All of our legal property lines, all of our utilities and private enterprise are all tied to those. So everybody knows exactly where things are. And so that's really the point. The reason we're in front of council is this is a commitment to a provincial body, and it's a financial commitment over a long term, and we'd really like to see council's blessing. Be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. To you, to Mr. Sims. I'm assuming because we have many local survey companies that they're all excited that we would continue with this, and there's no opposition.
Oh, that's correct.
Thank you.
All of them are on this, and we participate with them in the publishing of the lists of the monuments. So that's everybody's sort of tied in. It really helps.
Councillor Turley, why don't you make the recommended motion? I don't see any other speakers. Well, you just have to indicate you're moving it.
I get the easy job, do I? Yeah, okay. I move option 1, I think it is, that council commit to an integrated survey area program, blah, 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 blah.
Thank you. Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? None opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 375-704 Hyatt Place. Mr. Corson, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The subject property is located north of Nanaimo. It's near Shook Park, and the applicant is in the process of renovating their home, which was built in 1981. Part of this project includes enclosing a carport into a garage, which requires an expansion to accommodate the vehicles. The renovation will result in the renovated garage being extended towards the road, and that's going to intrude within the 6-meter setback from the front yard. And so the applicant is asking for a 1.5-meter variance from this front yard from the front yard setback. Staff support this request, and we've conducted the statutory notification. And as of right now, we have not received any feedback from the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone here tonight or anyone online who wishes to speak with respect to DVP 375-704 Hyatt Place?
There's no one online for council meetings, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry. Would someone care to make the recommended motion? Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Hemmens. Any discussion on this matter? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. The next is Development Variance Permit Application Number DVP 426-2230 Neil Drive. Mr. Corson again, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. This subject property is located in the Westwood Lake neighborhood. It's a corner property, and it's of sufficient size to subdivide into 2 lots, which are consistent with the R1A zone, which is the Westwood Lake zone. The applicant would like to subdivide the property, retaining the existing house and creating a new development lot to the north. The proposed subdivision would meet the setback requirements under the zoning bylaw, with the exception of lot depth. And the applicant is requesting that a variance be granted to reduce the minimum lot depth from 30 meters to 27.8, which is a variance of 2.2 meters. Statutory notification has taken place, and we've received 2 letters opposed to the variance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corson. Again, is there anyone here wishing to speak with respect to development variance permit application number DVP 426-2230 Neil Drive? Please, sir, if you wish to, if you could sort out who comes first. You will have 5 minutes if you could introduce yourself and give us your address. And I will let you know when you have a minute left if you're still talking.
Ladies, gentlemen, my name is David Edwards. My address is 259 Dawkins Lane, Nanaimo. Neighbor right next door to the property in reference. My question is on this: how can they ask for a variance when the property has not been surveyed properly? As I put in a complaint before on this property that the existing owners or the owners prior to this put a fence on our property, and it's basically about 7 feet on our property. So I would like to request that this property be resurveyed properly with the pins marked and the property lines actually indicated before any variance is allowed.
And are you finished, sir?
Actually, I also put this on file before the property was sold to indicate that there was a complaint about the property lines.
I appreciate the complaints about the property lines, but whether or not your neighbor put their fence on your property wouldn't impact on the actual validity of the survey lines themselves. But I'll let Mr. Corson comment.
Yeah, well, Your Worship, as part of the application, the owner did retain a qualified surveyor, the Turner Surveying, who does survey work throughout Nanaimo. So they have conducted the survey work, which would be, just like Mr. Sims said, in accordance with all the existing landmarks.
You're not placing council in a difficult position, but if I may say so, sir, and I'm probably going beyond what I should, have you ever had a survey done that confirms that the fence is on your land?
Actually, the city sent me a photo aerial copy of the survey, which I have on my phone, which indicates that that fence is on my property.
Okay.
And it came from your legal legislation department.
And I appreciate that, and I guess I'll defer to Councillor Armstrong. Wants to say
No, I'm just along what you were saying, Your Worship, is that the fact that it's not going to make any difference to the variance that we're asked to look at. Like, you know, I understand the importance that the survey is done incorrectly. I understand that.
That's my big complaint because I've been.
But to me, that's a separate issue than what council's being asked to look at tonight, because I don't know how it would impact on the variance unless you can explain it to me.
No, I have no idea on the impact on the variance.
Yeah, because that's what we're here to discuss is the variance. Like, I understand your concerns about that, but I think that's a separate matter than what council's being asked to look at.
Okay, I just want to bring it up in this so that's.
No, I appreciate that.
Because no one seems to have reacted to the initial complaint.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much.
thank you.
Let me just say before I go to Councillor Hemmons and small benefit of my legal experience, if your neighbors put their fence on your property, and it is in fact on your property, and a survey would confirm that, it doesn't change the legal status whatsoever. You still have a right to make a claim in the court system if necessary. It's not the city's job or jurisdiction, though, to determine whether or not the fence is on your property or not. And
I realize that. I do realize that. I'm just saying that this was put in before the sale, so why did they not survey the property or advise the property owner that was buying this property of that issue?
I appreciate that, and that would be a matter between the present owners and purchasers and the previous vendor. Although, again, it would depend, I mean, now I can make this into a long, complex evening. It would depend on what sort of disclosure was made, et cetera. So it gets a bit dicey. But what I can say with comfort to you before I go to Councillor Hemmons is the variance itself, if granted, and allowing for the subdivision into 2 lots, if that fence is on the wrong side of the property line, it's on the wrong side of the property line today, it'll be on the wrong side of the property line tomorrow, and it'll be on the wrong side of the
Unless they
property
take it
line.
down.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. And the second delegation, please. And again, sir, if you can introduce yourself and give us your address when you get to the podium, and you'll have 5 minutes, of course.
Okay, my name is Robert Terrace. I live at 2234 Neil Drive, directly beside the property we're talking about. We're concerned with the variance in that it's not a problem to us that they have 2 homes there, but we're concerned that there may be something within the variance where they could place not only homes with suites, but also a duplex in there. And then we have quite a standing water issue because everything on Dawkins and Neil are lower than the road. So, and as it sits, our property has 7 lots from Dawkins running water into our backyard already. Last year, we spent several $1,000s putting in a 50-foot long French drain to deal with some of the water issues. So we're just concerned that the developer really addresses the water issues that are there and make sure that I don't get flooded out in the future.
And that's all you wish to say, sir?
Yeah, well, I'm concerned that that's an issue that's going to happen. I don't know I've never had to come in and, I mean, we have no problem with 2 homes going on there. The neighborhood is fine. It's all got larger lots, but I don't want to wake up and have, like at the east end or the north end of Jinglepot, where the houses are all so close together. I think they're done in some kind of a duplex system that they're all paying to the city or paying into a group. So, yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Mr. Corson, if you could perhaps comment, please.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. The 2 letters council received both mentioned concerns about the drainage, so I had a chance to talk to our engineering department about that. So the applicant right now has submitted the DVP for the variance to reduce the lot depth. If council were to grant that tonight, the next step is for the applicant to submit a subdivision application. And through that subdivision application, the owner of that property, prior to any subdivision taking place, will have to do the engineering studies to look at the drainage. They'll have to do the design work for the road upgrades, including sidewalks, et cetera. And one of the requirements through the Manual of Engineering Standards and Specs is they need to look at drainage and to actually solve the drainage problem back to where the next spot is. So certainly, tonight you'd be in a position to grant a variance, but there's much more technical work to do after this.
Thank you.
Okay, so they are going to be addressing. That's what I heard. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming tonight. Councillor Hemmons is moving the recommendation, seconded by Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Excuse me. Very briefly, I appreciate the concerns of the delegation, but it's good to know that those concerns will be dealt with at the next step of the process, so they won't be ignored. So thank you. Good.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, I just wanted to confirm that while they're looking for a variance on the depth of the lot, I'm assuming then that the width of the subdivision, each lot will be wider than the minimum?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Turley, that's correct, yes. So all the other setback requirements are met. It was just the lot depth.
Thank you.
Any discussion further? Seeing none, all those in favor? And any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. And I thank the delegations tonight for raising these issues so that certainly staff and council are aware of them. The next is Covenant Amendment Application Number CA15-416 Wakesai Avenue. And Mr. Holm, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Apologies for the short delay. As you noted, the application in front of you now is a covenant amendment application with consideration of a housing agreement a bylaw to authorize council to enter into a housing agreement related to a proposed student housing development at 416 Wakesaya. If you could, please, I'm not sure if we're able to bring up the context map on the screen overhead. That's attachment A to the report. That'll identify the property location. It's in the Harewood neighborhood. It's directly across Wakesaya Avenue from Vancouver Island University. And it was actually the subject of a rezoning, thank you very much for that, rezoning application previously in 2016. The property was rezoned at that point to Corridor 2 zone. And at that time, the proposal was for a 44-bed student housing development. At that time, a Section 219 covenant was entered into as well. The housing agreement and covenant limited the development to 44 student housing beds at that time. The proposal in front of you today is to increase the maximum permitted number of student housing beds to 117 beds that would be spread out between 44 units. The proposal would also include 3 commercial retail units and would fit within the permitted uses under the and density under the Core 2 zone. If you could bring up the conceptual site plan attachment C, that would be helpful. Thank you. So no variances are proposed to support the proposed development, and the concept plan has demonstrated that the site can accommodate the required parking. They're providing underground parking in the concept proposed here. And if you could bring up the conceptual perspective views on attachment D, that would be helpful as well. Thank you. So the applicant's requesting to increase the number of beds, and the request is apparently demonstrated in support of the demand for student housing in the area. To meet the demand, the applicant proposes a community amenity contribution of $22,000 towards parks, recreation, and culture improvements in the Vancouver Island University / Harewood neighborhood area. This community amenity contribution proposal would be consistent with the $300 per bed and $34 per square meter of commercial floor area that was secured through the previous rezoning. Should council approve the first 3 readings of this housing agreement bylaw and direct staff to proceed to a public hearing with the covenant amendment, there would be opportunity for public input at that time through that process. The proposal is consistent with the policies of the official community plan, the Harewood neighborhood plan, the affordable housing strategy, and the Nanaimo transportation master plan. Staff recommend proceeding with bylaw readings and moving the covenant forward to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Holm. Councillor Thorpe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, to Mr. Holm. I was interested reading this report, Mr. Holm, because I'm certainly in favor of increased student housing, especially in that area of the city. But I also always have some reservations about covenant amendments. And I think we have to be very careful about approaching those. So my questions are, because I didn't see it in the report, maybe I just missed it. When was the original covenant for 44 beds granted? And do you recall, or can you tell me what was the reason for the covenant for 44 beds? Because we're talking about a huge increase here, 44 up to, was it 117? So I'm curious about the history on this.
Yeah, I can tell you the date. So the rezoning application was 2016. And as far as the reasoning for the covenant amendment, the proposal at that time was for 44 beds. The applicants indicated demand for additional. I guess they've taken another look at the property, look at the demand in the area for student housing beds, and redesigned. At that point, the the zoning bylaw, the rezoning at that point included a requirement to enter into a housing agreement, and the 44 beds was identified as what was requested, and so the development of the property was limited to 44 beds at the time. I don't think there was any specific, there's no specific constraint related to the property that would prevent them from providing additional beds. We've reviewed that, and the proposal they put forward is consistent with the zoning that was put in place for the property. It provides for that density and for the number of beds proposed, as well as the 3 commercial units proposed. So I can't speak to any specific limitation. At that time, I guess in 2016, we didn't have, there's been some evolution in maybe in bylaws as well in the city. The parking bylaw was updated in 2018, which established a parking rate for student housing. That may be one aspect, and actually introduced a staggered rate, a lower rate for properties that were closer to Vancouver Island University, higher rate as properties move away from Vancouver Island University. And that may be one aspect of why they're considering additional beds. There's a specific parking rate that they've also had experience with student housing on a property adjacent to, and the operation and demand there's a 37-bed student housing development that's been operating a number of years immediately adjacent to this property. And there's definitely a demand for additional beds that they've identified through that.
Thank you very much. That helps me.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship, for you to Mr. Holm. So I'm curious because one of the requests is increase the number of beds. So that leads me to believe that there's no kitchen facilities in these units, and is there a cafeteria involved, or? I'm just wondering if, the commercial units are actually going to be have feeding capability for the students, or whether they have their own. And I couldn't find anything in the report.
Yeah, my understanding is they will have cooking facilities.
Okay.
Not full kitchens, but they will, in all likelihood, I can't speak to the makeup of the commercial units, but there's a good chance that there will be some food services there as well.
So going back in my day, a hot plate and a kettle.
Councillor Hemmons, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2021, number 7334, to authorize a housing agreement for a student housing development at 416 Wakesaya Avenue pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. I would move that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2021, number 7334, pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Any contrary? Seeing none, motion carries.
I would
Councillor
move that Housing Agreement Bylaw 2021, number 7334, pass third reading.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None, motion carries.
I would move council direct staff to proceed with a public hearing to consider the proposed covenant amendment.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None, motion carries. Pardon me. The next is rezoning application number RA 4686004 Nelson Road. Mr. Holm.
Thank you again, Your Worship. This is a rezoning application from Seaward Developments on behalf of Black Squirrel Developments Limited. The applicant proposes to rezone the subject property from R1 to R6. The proposal, the concept demonstrated as a 16-unit townhouse development. And if you could bring up the concept site plan, attachment C, on the overhead, that would be helpful. The proposed developments within the neighborhood adjacent to Randerson Ridge School, and the proposed concept would result in a density of approximately 27 units per hectare, which is within the 10 to 50 units per hectare that the neighborhood designated land support within the current official community plan. As I mentioned, it's in close proximity to Rounderson Ridge School, provides an alternative housing option there, some additional housing options for people in the area. It's proposed as 16 units at this point. That's conceptual. The applicant is proposing monetary contribution, community amenity contribution of $1,000 per unit. Based on 16 units, that would be $16,000. It's recommended that 40% of the funds be directed towards housing legacy and 60% towards park and trail improvements in the area. If council were to support the application through to third reading, there are a number of items that we'd recommend be secured prior to consideration of adoption. Those would include additional road dedication, a pedestrian statutory right-of-way through the property, access restriction to limit the number of accesses on Nelson Road. That was based on some feedback that was heard through community consultation to limit the number of accesses on Nelson Road, and that would also provide a presence on Nelson Road with the units as demonstrated there. And as well, we would be looking to secure the community amenity contribution prior to council's consideration of adoption of a bylaw, should council support the bylaw at third reading. Happy to take any questions if you'd like, and I know the applicant's representative is in attendance tonight as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Corson. Pardon me, Mr. Holm. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. I just have a question. Are they going to be
They look
putting in a
so alike.
sidewalk besides a pedestrian path, as that area doesn't have a sidewalk and the kids go to school on the road?
Yeah, they would be doing the frontage works and services on Nelson, Nelson Road as well. There are plans, and it would have to, the details would develop through development permit, the next step in this process if council were to support the rezoning. But there is a concept for a pedestrian pathway to connect through the property as well. But yeah, Nelson Road would have frontage improvements.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hemmons?
Your Worship, I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.192 to rezone 6004 Nelson Road from single dwelling residential R1 to low density residential R6 pass first reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Councillor Hemmons?
Thank you. I would move that zoning amendment bylaw 2021 number 4500.192 pass second reading.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Councillor Hemmons?
And I would move that should council support the bylaw at third reading, we direct staff to secure the road dedication, a statutory right-of-way for a pedestrian path, the community amenity contribution, and a section 219 covenant for the restriction to one driveway access and to register the geotechnical report.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next is development permit application number DP 1220-4961 Songbird Place. Mr. Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. If you could bring up the attachment B, the context map on the overhead, I would appreciate that. This is an application from Westmark Construction for a multifamily development with proposed 98 rental units to be located at 4961 Songbird Place. You can see the property on the overhead. It's adjacent to Nanaimo North Town Center, and it fronts on Rutherford Road with access from Songbird Place. It's a bit of an irregularly shaped property, and it does have a wetland that it is adjacent to, and the design incorporates, or the proposal incorporates a design that respects that the shape and as well as the wetland setback that's required there. If you could please bring up the site plan on attachment D, that would be helpful. Thank you. So this property would be familiar to council. It was rezoned in 2020 actually with a rezoning from R1 to Corridor 1 to support multifamily development. To Corridor. Yeah, to Corridor 1. The subject property is currently vacant, includes a wetland, as I mentioned, and you can see the applicant has, it's a triangularly shaped property, and the applicant has chosen an L-shaped building to provide some presence on Rutherford Road while respecting the wetland and the other constraints of the property. If you could bring up attachment F, the building renderings, that would be helpful. Thank you. So again, the property is accessed from Songbird. It does front on Rutherford as well. And the proposal is for a 5-story building in an L shape with one section facing Rutherford, the other facing the wetland, and sited outside the 15-meter aquatic setback. The proposal also includes a vegetation management plan. There you go. There's a nice image of it. The proposal also includes a vegetation management plan of the riparian area that includes removal of invasive species, as well as maintaining soil and replanting approximately 25% of the area with indigenous plants. The proposal includes underground parking, and the design incorporates horizontal and vertical accent walls and elements that include a blend of exterior materials and colors that break up the massing of the building. And as well, the exterior is proposed to include cement board panel and wood-like cement board plank, as well as balconies that provide some outdoor space and nice views from there. The design advisory panel accepted the application as presented with support for there's a proposed minor setback and building height variance. The design panel provided some recommendations that the applicant has addressed where possible. And the variances requested building height, quite minor, is 0.42 meters, and then as well a front yard setback of 1.05 meters. And the proposal does address the applicable development permit area design guidelines, and staff support the proposed variances as well. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ullman. Councillor Armstrong?
Thank you. I'm just looking at the diagram. Are they going to be coming out on Songbird Place again? That was the question I had originally. I know it's not the variance, because I did vote against this, but I just wanted to know if that's been addressed.
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Armstrong, the access will be through to Songbird Place, and through the rezoning there were some improvements secured for the intersection of Songbird and Uplands.
Yeah, thank you.
Would someone care to make the recommended motion? Councillor Bonner, seconded Councillor Thorpe. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. The next is 2022 Council and Committee Key Date Calendars. Ms. Gurry.
Thank you, Your Worship. So this report is in accordance with Section 127 of the Community Charter, as well as Council's Procedure Bylaw number 7272, where it outlines that Council is required to adopt a key date calendar each year by December 31st for the following year's Council meetings. The report outlines that regular Council meetings have been scheduled on the first and third Mondays of the month, with exceptions noted in the report. Public hearings have been scheduled for the third Thursday of the month. And for your information, the key date calendars for committees have been attached to the report. And of interest, page 100 and 101 of your agenda gives you the meeting calendars for 2022, highlighting the volume of all of the different meeting types that Council has for the City of Nanaimo. And this does not include meetings that you are committed to in your roles as members of the Regional District of Nanaimo Board. I would like to thank Sky Snellgrove for her work in making the schedule work, and I would be happy to answer any questions any of you may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gurry. Any questions? Seeing none, Councillor Armstrong makes the motion. Councillor Thorpe seconds. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Thank you for your work on this. And Ms. Snellgrove, of course. The next is bylaws. Zoning Amendment Bylaw 2021 number 4500.185. Councillor Hemmons.
Bylaw 2021, number 4500.185, to rezone 1621 Northfield Road from single-dwelling residential R1 to residential corridor Core 1 be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. The next is council procedure bylaw amendment. Bylaw 2021, number 7272.03. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Council Procedure Bylaw Amendment Bylaw 2021, number 7272.03, to authorize the holding of electronic meetings and remote participation by council members be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Bonner. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you. And the final one is Property Tax Exemption Bylaw 2021, number 7332. Councillor Hemmens.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would move that Property Tax Exemption Bylaw 2021, number 7332, to provide exemption from 2022 property taxes be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. The next is notices of motion. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do you want them together? That council support the RCMP Community Policing Team in securing a meeting with the Honourable Sheila Malcolmson, MLA, to present the safety audit reports and request a solution, and that council direct staff to engage with the Union of British Columbia Municipalities to engage the province on resolving the issue of how 911 calls can be routed and responded to by mental health specialists, whether it be police or Ministry of Health throughout the province.
And we have a seconder.
It's a notice.
Your Worship, it's
Notice. Sorry, it's notice, yes. I am jumping ahead. Thank you very much, Councillor. And I might say in response that unless someone would object, I'd certainly be prepared to write appropriate letters in these circumstances. In any event, the next is Councillor Hemmens, notice of motion, memorandum of understanding with BC Housing.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to provide notice of motion for 2 weeks' time that I will that council directs staff to negotiate a memorandum of understanding with BC Housing, which incorporates the following: addresses housing needs identified in the Health and Housing Action Plan, explores opportunities to cap permanent supportive housing units at 35 residents, creation of dry facilities, and development of transition housing.
Thank you very much, Councillor.
Calling for that for years.
We have any other business?
Calling for that for years.
I am assuming there's no question period sheet.
There's a sheet, Your Worship, but there's nobody in attendance.
There's just nothing on it.
There's nobody here.
Tabula rasa, is that the phrase I'm looking on? A motion for adjournment. Moved, Councillor Hemmens, seconded, Councillor Martman.
Sandy's
All those
job.
in favor? Opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much, councillors. Good night, Councillor Brown.